Saluts. Lately I've been playing around with the new Dread Captain's Cutlass and its unique crafting system. After spending a lot on it, I learned a lot, but unfortunately the build I made didn't turn out as well as I wanted it to. So this video is more of a learn from my mistakes rather than a proper build guide. I'll still go over the build. I was constantly changing the build as I was recording footage. At one point I even respec'd the entire tree, so there will be some differences between each clip. So what even is Dread Captain's Cutlass anyway? This is a new sword that drops from the League mechanic with its own unique crafting system. It can be offline crafted as if it's rare and has its own unique mod pool. I'll link a Reddit post with the full mod list in the description. The key mod that everyone's talking about is trigger Ghost Artillery when you attack with this weapon. Ghostly Artillery is a projectile attack with a 0.15 second cooldown that spawns a row of cannons behind you and attack after a 1 second delay, doing your weapon damage. These are normal projectiles with a built-in volley mechanic. They can do all things projectiles can, like chain or return if you support it with that. The triggering condition is also unique in that it is at the start of any attack, even if you don't hit anything. This does mean repeats will not trigger it. There seems to be some exceptions. It's only with this weapon, so obviously not shield charge, but neither does Whirling Assault or Lancing Steel, despite them attacking with the weapon. Triggered attacks are actually quite rare, and there are a lot of technical things you can do with it. But for the most part, it'll either be a little extra damage or something you build around. The Squire unique shield will apply supports to the artillery if you use it this way. Back to sword crafting, you can only roll mods in this exclusive mod pool unless you either force it on with an essence or expand the mod pool with influence. Using an influence exalt, most relevantly is Shaper, will add the influences mod pool to future rolls. This creates a lot of potential for some easily accessible support gem swords. You can only get one influence on this weapon, as Awakener's orbs don't work. Now the base weapon doesn't have good raw damage potential, so this is something best scaled with other sources of added damage. Strength stacking Shaper mod or Abyssal stacking are the standout options. Do be warned that making this item is as close as we have gotten to a literal slot machine in the game. Be prepared to burn hundreds of thousands of sulfur. My crafting method was to use Shaper influence on the sword and then spam attack speed essences until I hit strength and artillery. I then annulled the bad mods and exalted the remaining ons on one by one, hoping to get lucky. And I did, and I ended up with this sword. I linked it in global when I crafted it, and then someone screenshotted it and posted it to Reddit. People were talking about how insane it is, but now I'm here to tell you why it's actually not that good. The issue with this sword is that it wants to do two separate things. Support gem mods like the one in this item don't support skills inherent to the item, only the gems in them. So for the artillery, all of the support gem mods are effectively dead mods. Also the flammability on strike mod basically pigeonholes me into using strike skills. So on one hand we want to support the artillery, on the other we want to socket a strike skill into the weapon. Doing so removes one possible support from artillery. The Squire will work on both the socketed gem and artillery, but now we're limited to support gems that affect both, and there is not that many. There's realistically only one skill that has a good support crossover for me, and that is Lightning Strike. This lets me use returning projectiles without taking too much of a hit on the strike skill's damage. The returning projectiles gem is not ideal. You really want a global source of return from either Sab or Nemes, but that's both not my ascendancy and out of budget. Other content creators are making builds along those lines. You should look for those if you want that kind of build. Before I go into the build, I want to talk more about other options with the sword. This will probably be the easiest time to craft a support gem sword, using this as a base. While it won't be perfect, like the ones found on Mirror Service, it's pretty close and is relatively accessible. If doing this, I would avoid artillery for one, as it doesn't really help you that much. I would also like to note a few other good Shaper mods. Socketed skills do 40% more damage is better than most support gems. Treat it like a gem link. Mana cost can get really high when you have a lot of support links to skills. So movement skills cost no mana suffix is very good if you're doing something like Flicker Strike. This weapon also has potential for being a decent blood-soaked banner stat stick, having lots of sources of Dalt Multi, although it will be a lot harder to craft than a rare, and the rare is pretty close in power anyway. Now onto the build. I am playing a strength stacking Lightning Strike Reliquarian. Reliquarian this league gets Namhu's Flame, which gives Molten Burst on melee hit. This is basically the same effect as Molten Strike, but as a trigger. It has the same 0.15 second cooldown as artillery. So the goal was to maximize triggers. This is only a little extra damage, but it can multi-hit bigger targets. I am a strength stacker, so Comms Binding's 15% strength is pretty obvious. The Fire Convert pairs well with Dawnbreaker's Fist taken as fire as well. The Ascendancy itself is rather boring, but it is decently effective. Forbiddens are Chieftain, percent strength and covered in ash, that's pretty obvious. My weapon is Dread Captain's Cutlass from before, and a Squire. This will apply support gems in the shield to both my Lightning Strike and the Ghostly Artillery. I have not made a strength stacker in a good while, so I'm probably missing some modern strength stacking tech. I'm doing the standard Iron Fortress and Crown of Eyes combo for increased damage. How it works is that strength inherently has 1% melee physical damage per 5 strength. Iron Fortress increases this up to 3 per 10. The Keystone Iron Will makes this bonus also apply to spell damage, and then Crown of Eyes converts spell damage into generic attack damage at 1.5 times value. This combo simply gives you a lot of increased damage for stacking strength, which we're already doing. Iron Fortress has some downsides that need to be addressed. Spell block chances unlucky can be fixed through a rune graph of stability, which makes it unexciting. This just takes the average of 3 rolls. It also has 10% move speed penalty, and that just makes the build feel annoying and slow. Removing gear move speed penalty from the duelist area did a lot, but no matter what I do, it always feels sluggish. My only other unique is a Foulborn Menginord's Girdle, which has a 18% strength roll on it. Do note that Synth Implicits were removed in this patch, so those are no longer options. I am not using any heist-based jewelry or reflected jewelry due to cost concerns as well as having inexperience in crafting them. Instead, I settled for Fractured Life and Strength's Essence spammed rings. I did try a talisman for my amulet, and I like it. You get strong enchantments in exchange for not being able to anoint them. Mine is 15% Fire Pen. Talismans are also easily rerolled using a Beastcraft, so you can turn any base into any other base pretty freely. The rest of the gear is just life and res. I struggled to get resistances on this build, I even had to take some on the tree. Chaos res is negative and I have to rely on Amethyst Flasks and Pantheons to not die to poison. Most of my strength comes from 12 passive fire clusters, rolled for strength and all attributes. These are really easy to craft on the ship. I got about 1600 strength, which I don't think is very high nowadays. This build is really good at one thing, and that's not being able to see anything. It's decently tanky, for one of my builds at least, as well as having capped versatile combated block. The damage is okay. Artillery isn't in POB, but on average the tooltip in game is about 50% higher than Molten Burst. If you account for everything and returning projectiles, it's about 7 to 8 mil DPS, going up to 10 if flasks are up. That's not that good considering how much I invested into this, which is I think about 35 divines. One problem that I see is that the Shaper's Strength Stack mod alone isn't really that much damage. Pure Fire Strength Stack builds tend to prefer Brutus-led Sprinkler, as it has double as high scaling as the Shaper mod. The only time the Shaper mod is really used is when someone's doing replica Alberons and using an original Sin Ring, but I don't have yacht money for that. I'm probably missing something important and fundamental here, as I see a lot of builds have higher strength than me, but worse gear. If I were to do it different, I would first craft the sword differently and probably not play Reliquarian. Strength stack can work, but it's probably better as a replica Alberon's build. The sword has a lot of build craft traps that make you want to go into fire, resist that. I think artillery is best done as the core focus, with some source of global return projectiles. Putting artillery in a supports gem weapon really isn't worth it. They both use Squire, but they don't go together. So I would probably give this build 6 out of 10. It does perform okay, but not for the investment. The constant slowness of Iron Fortress while playing a strike skill wasn't that fun. It did come out rather tanky, most of which I've only gained in the massive respec I did to the duelist side. My POB will have both my old and new trees. The idea can work in both artillery and gem sword versions, but you have to pick one, you can't do both. And that's about all for this one. I have to say, there is far too much Luminary slander going around. I league started it as Fizzdot, and it was one of my cleanest starts I've ever had. Usually when I reroll on day 3, it's because my build sucks, but this time I had all Watchstones and farmed 30 Divines. Maybe I should make a video going over basic Merc tech. Luminary is a lot stronger than people give her credit for.